Let's Talk Money.
Welcome back. You're with us on Let's Talk Money, and this week we are giving you the basics of small and mid-cap fund selection. And now it's time to get to the really exciting part, which is some funds that Alekh specifically likes. Alekh Yadav is, of course, from Sanctum Wealth. So, Alekh, now this is the juicy bit that our viewers are really waiting for.
Sure.
Let's start by talking slightly broader in terms of AMCs that have had a good track record.
Sure.
That know this business of, picking the winners of tomorrow, so to speak. What does your experience tell you?
Yeah. So, an AMC which has had fund managers who have, really sort of done well. Some of them include Invesco, Nippon. Bandhan is doing well right now. Edelweiss has done well. They've had a fund manager change, but the new fund manager after he took up has really changed. So these are some of the AMCs that have done well. What we see with mid and small cap is that it's generally led by the fund manager. So the fund manager's capability comes really handy. The investment framework, the way the fund manager manages is also important. But his track record, his expertise is also quite relevant when it comes to the mid and small cap space, at least.
Does the age of the fund house matter? Because I mean, you have a lot of new AMCs now coming up as well. So there you might not have like someone with a 15-year track record with the same AMC, though he or she might be a great stock picker. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah. So and there have been instances in the past as well. So for example, Mirai, when it came, hardly people knew, but when Nilesh took over and he started managing, he's been exceptional. His track record has been really good. So that can happen where a new fund manager comes in, is able to show his track record, etc. One issue that some smaller AMCs will always face is attracting talent, right? And you need talent, you need the right kind of people to sort of do the research. So that newer AMCs will always keep facing. But if it's an AMC which can sort of upfront some of these costs, get a good person, to head the mid and small caps, then that can happen.
Let me ask you, who are your favorite small and mid cap fund managers and why?
Sure. So one of the funds that we really like is Invesco Small Cap. So this is a fund managed by Tahir Badshah. He's himself, been in the market for a very long time. He's got a very consistent track record of managing. He's the CIO of Invesco as well. What Invesco also does is that they have a very good investment process. So every stock they categorize based on certain parameters. They call it Diamond, Frog Prince, Warrior, etc. And that is how they've categorized each of these funds. This is a framework that they've put over the last few years. And that has really worked out well for them. And recently, Aditya Khemani joined them from Motilal, and he's bringing new ideas for them as a fund house as well. And they've done well. So that is a fund that we really like, which is the Invesco Small Cap Fund. The other fund that we also like, this is a mid-cap fund that we like, which is Nippon India Growth Fund. So this is a fund managed by Rupesh Patel. He took over the fund more recently in 2022, but he's got a much longer track record of managing money. They follow a growth at right price kind of approach, a GARP approach to managing money. They're very conscious about liquidity, and that's very important. As we mentioned, also fund sizes can become a concern. Owning too much of a company can become a concern. So he's very cautious about the liquidity of the portfolio as well. And that has really done well for him, and his track record also has done well for them. Their up captures and down captures, which is basically how they've done in bull markets, and down markets have also been very good for Invesco. The final one that we'll talk right now is Edelweiss. This is a fund managed by Trideb. Trideb joined from Axis.
Trideb
Bhattacharya. So Trideb he was earlier with Axis, was looking at their PMS business, had a good track record managing the Axis PMSs as well. And then he took over the fund house recently. They had a much smaller team initially. Now that team is growing up. The AUM is becoming bigger. So they have hired many more analysts and fund managers more recently. He follows, he's not style biased. So he doesn't follow a growth approach or a value approach. His basic thing is bottom-up stock picking. We'll find the right ideas and not be biased by a particular style that is there. What that allows to do is that it allows a little more consistency, because there are styles which can perform at one point of time. They may underperform at a certain period of time. This way, the consistency can be a little more, especially if you're able to pick the right stocks. And he's again very cautious about liquidity in his portfolio. Doesn't take macro calls, doesn't take cash calls, etc. And that is done really well for the.
Okay, so let's recap the fund names and the fund managers, all the three.
So we started with Invesco Small Cap. This is managed by Tahir Badshah. He's the CIO of Invesco, and that's a fund that we that we choose in the small cap bucket. In the mid cap, we have Nippon India Growth Fund. This is the mid cap fund managed by Rupesh Patel. So that's the pick there. And then finally, we have Edelweiss Mid Cap Fund, which is by Trideb Bhattacharya. So this is the third fund.
2 mid cap fund ideas and one small cap fund
right
ideas.
now.
Got it. Great. Thank you very much. Now, just as we come to sort of last and final thoughts.
Yeah.
What could go wrong in our mid-cap investment journey? What are the classic mistakes to avoid?
Sure. So what happens is, first thing is generally that we see, is that the timing becomes a big problem. Most investors follow after a strong performance has already happened.
Yeah.
So if you came in, say September 2024, you're down about 15-20%. In peak time, you're down about 25-30%. So that, I think, is something to avoid, not to chase returns. Look at what the conversation on valuation, etc. is. So that's generally about mid and small caps.
So on that, one follow-up question.
Yeah.
People who invested close to the peak of the market, say around 26,000, and they took mid-cap exposure, and now they've been sitting on losses. Would you recommend that they should remain invested and ride this out? Or a lot of them would be thinking, should I just take the hit and maybe invest afresh later? Yeah,
it depends on how much amount of mid and small cap you have also, right? If you end up, like we talked about earlier, 20-25% mid small is the overall allocation amongst the market cap. Now, if you are at 50-60%, then of course you need to cut down. You need to bring it down. But if you're on the lower end, then stick with it. What we have seen, as we saw the data as well, over longer periods, mid and small caps tend to do well. And that's what one should look at. Depends on overall allocation that you have in your portfolio.
So mistake number one, which you have to avoid, is trying to time your entry and exit in mid-cap funds. What else?
Yeah, the other thing is that, this thing, you also can end up choosing the fund which is the most best performing fund, and you end up just buying that. What you should also look at consistency of returns, and that's something that we spoke about earlier. You don't want a fund which was quartile 4 earlier, now became quartile 1, and probably could become quartile 4. If the fund manager has been able to even achieve, say, quartile 2 on a continuous basis, then that is a more consistent fund. That should be chosen over a fund which keeps switching between quartiles.
Okay, all right. So don't go for the flash in the pan kind of stars. Stay with consistency. Got that point. Finally, the active versus passive debate. Because what we saw as the market was peaking around September, October, a lot of index funds got launched as well last year, right? We had funds on the small cap index, on the mid cap index. We had funds based on several factors like momentum, mid cap plus momentum, etc. Things like that. What is your take on such formats of passive mid and small cap investing?
So when we look at the data when it comes to the mid cap funds outperformance, almost 60% of the time, mid and small cap funds have outperformed benchmark, which is a decent outcome. For large cap, it is less than 50%. So less than one and a half fund outperform benchmark consistently. Here, over a 5-year period, almost 60-70% funds outperform benchmark. That's one. The other thing is almost 70% times they've outperformed benchmarks on a rolling return basis. So if you look at last 20 years data and do a 7-year time horizon, any 7 year that you have taken, 70% of the times median mid-cap funds have outperformed benchmark and delivered an alpha of about 1-2% over the benchmark, which is decent. Large cap, that number is very poor. In small caps, it's even better. In small caps, almost 95% times funds outperform benchmark. And there the outperformance is almost like 4-5%.
That's a pretty high outperformance ratios or numbers that you're talking about. That in small caps is as much as you're saying 70% plus of the median funds, or is it 90%?
90% plus for small caps.
90% of the times, a median sort of range of small cap funds will outperform the small cap index.
That's right, and on average by 5%.
Okay, so the outperformance can be as much as 5%, which again, if you're compounding over long periods, is going to add up to a sizable difference.
That's right. The one reason there is that, in the small cap is where the least amount of information is available. Something called information asymmetry is maximum in small caps. And there is lesser research that is happening from sell side and other people as well. FIIs are also less invested. So that's where the fund manager's skill can really come out and he can find gems, and that is what people have done in the past.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense to look for good, fund managers who know how to pick those mega stars or future multiplier stars, so to speak, and then look at active investing when it comes to small and mid caps. All right, final word, Alekh, any final advice or tips for our viewers before we wrap up?
So I think it's always about asset allocation. It's always about having frameworks. So as we said, there should be a guardrail of how much of mid and small cap you should have. Never exceed that guardrail, either on the upside or on the downside. And if you do that, then over long periods, your portfolio should do well.
Okay. All right. Very interesting conversation and a fairly helpful one as well. And thank you for some of those ideas as well on small and mid-cap funds that our viewers can look at. Really appreciate you being here
Thank you so
today.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, viewers. Hopefully you found this conversation interesting and of use. Do keep sending us your feedback and your comments, queries, anything else that you want us to talk about. And we'll pick it up in the coming weeks. Thank you very much for watching.
Let's talk money